Rain came in sideways that night, slashing through the city like knives of cold light. Rick curled tighter beneath the 3rd Street overpass, knees to chest, cardboard pulled over his head like a paper-thin shield. The wind howled through the cracks in the concrete, and water dripped steadily from a rusted pipe, forming a dark puddle near his boots. His back ached from sleeping on stone. His stomach gnawed at itself. His fingers, stiff and purple, clutched the backpack he used as both pillow and vault. This was routine now. Nights like this didn't surprise him. He knew the timing of passing trains, the names of rats, the sound of silence when the city didn't even bother pretending to care. He wasn't dead, but he wasn't exactly living either. He was on pause, forgotten, a loose thread in a city too busy to notice one more unraveling man. He hadn't always been Rick. His name used to be Michael Riker Mike to his friends, Riker to his co-workers, Dad for a short, golden stretch that now felt like another life. He'd worn suits then, drank lattes, jogged on Saturdays. There was a mortgage, a wife, a daughter named Natalie who had his eyes and loved bad jokes. He'd had a world messy, busy, but it all broke. It started with a layoff. Then came the arguments, the fear, the drinking. Job interviews stopped calling. Friends stopped answering. The drinking got worse. One day, his wife told him to leave, and this time he did. The couch at his brother's lasted 3 weeks. The shelter lasted less. Eventually, the streets claimed him, and Mike Riker became Rick. Shorter, harder, easier to ignore. He didn't think of himself as homeless anymore. Just gone. Like a man who missed his exit years ago and decided to keep driving into the dark, tonight. Though, something felt different. Not hopeful he didn't waste time on that anymore, but sharp. The cold had teeth. He'd eaten a half sandwich the day before. Nothing since. He kept his wrappers. Not to reuse, but to remember when things were a little better. That was his scale now, one day better than the last if you didn't bleed or starve. He tried to sleep. It didn't work. The wind kept pushing, like it had something to say. That's when he saw it. At first, he thought it was trash, just another crushed can or food wrapper half buried beneath the bench across the walkway. But something about the shape pulled at him. Intentional. Rectangular. Real. He waited until a delivery van passed, then forced himself up. His knees cracked. His boots felt like ice. He shuffled across the slick concrete. It was a wallet, dark brown leather, scuffed at the edges but intact. It had weight, real heft. He looked around, heart ticking faster. No one was near. Just traffic humming in the distance and a drunk guy muttering to himself by the convenience store. He opened the wallet with slow fingers. Cash. Not a couple bucks, hundreds. 20s, 10s, 50s, folded neatly in a thick bundle. A driver's license. The man in the photo was in his 50s, silver at the temples, dark suit, confident eyes. Marcus Delgado. The name sounded rich, powerful. The kind of guy who owned things, buildings, companies, weekends. Tucked behind the license were business cards. Delgado Real Estate Group, Executive Vice President. There were also 2 credit cards, a gym membership, and a photo of a teenage girl and a dog. Rick stared at the girl's face. She looked like she went to private school. She looked like she'd never had to count meal skips between free soup lines. He closed the wallet and held it to his chest for a second. It felt warm there, like holding someone else's life. He could take it. No one would know. He could walk 3 blocks, buy a meal, maybe even a coat. With the cards, he could do more. He could disappear into a cheap motel and sleep indoors for once. He could feel human. But he didn't. He couldn't. He'd stolen before. Not often, but hunger made ethics blur. Still, this wallet, this wasn't opportunity. This was a test. One of those moments when your soul stands up and asks, "Who are you now?" He didn't like the answer, not yet, but maybe he could start changing it. Rick sat down on the bench with the wallet in his lap. Rain misted the edge of the roof above. A woman walked past, glanced at him, then looked away quickly. A car alarm chirped in the distance. He opened the wallet again, stared at the bills. His hand shook as he touched them. He slid them halfway out, then pushed them back in. He zipped the wallet into his coat, stood, and looked around. Still alone. He didn't know where Delgado lived, but the business card listed an address for the office only 6 blocks away. Uptown. If he was lucky, the guy would still be there in the morning. He turned and started walking, wind at his back, hunger biting, hope still dead quiet. But something was different. This time, Rick wasn't running from anything. He was walking toward it. Rick walked with the wallet pressed to his chest under his jacket, like it might disintegrate if exposed too long. The rain had thinned into a mist, but the cold had set in for real now, the kind that soaked through denim and lived in your bones. His legs ached with every step, but he didn't stop. Not even when he passed the deli where he used to buy coffee back when he had a badge and a name worth printing on it. The streets were half empty, late enough for most people to be home, early enough that the buses still wheezed along their routes. He passed shuttered storefronts and glowing windows filled with warmth he couldn't touch. A family inside one was gathered around a TV, their laughter muffled by glass. He kept his eyes forward. If he let them linger, it hurt. By the time he reached the address on the card, Delgado Real Estate Group, the sun was beginning to smear gray along the horizon. It was a modern glass building with a clean metal plaque, spotless even in this weather. He didn't go in. Not yet. Instead, Rick sat on a concrete planter across the street, just under the awning of a bagel shop that hadn't opened yet. His jacket steamed faintly as the rain dried. The wallet rested on his lap again. He opened it for the 5th time. Counted again. $320. That kind of money could stretch a week if you knew how. Soup kitchens filled the cracks. $200 could get him through the worst of the winter. And yet, he couldn't do it. Every time he reached for a bill, a weight settled on him. Not guilt. Exactly, he wasn't a preacher, but something harder to define, like he'd be confirming the story the world already told about people like him, that they'd take whatever they could get, because they had nothing else left. He had pride, ragged, maybe, but real. By 7:15, lights flickered on in the building's lobby. A woman arrived with a keycard and a large coffee. A man in a green vest unlocked the side door and rolled in a mop bucket. At 7:52, the man from the photo stepped through the revolving door. Coffee in one hand, phone in the other, pacing. Marcus Delgado. Rick stood, his legs buckled slightly, but he crossed the street. He waited until Delgado finished his call, then raised his hand and called out, "Excuse me, sir." Delgado turned, scanning. He looked past Rick at first. Then he looked again, his eyes locking on the soaked jacket, the lined face, the wallet in Rick's hand. "I think you dropped this," Rick said, extending the wallet. Delgado's brows lifted. He took the wallet, opened it, paused. "You found this near the bridge." Delgado flipped through the contents. Cash untouched, cards in place, the photo of his daughter still wedged between receipts. He stared at Rick. "You didn't take anything." "No," Rick said. "Didn't seem right." Delgado looked stunned. Not just surprised, but moved. Like something cracked inside him. "Most people wouldn't have done this," he said softly. "I'm not most people." "No," Delgado said almost to himself. "You're not." He reached into his coat. Rick stepped back. "No," Rick said quickly. "I'm not here for money." Delgado froze, nodded slowly. "All right. Then can I ask your name?" "Rick," he said. "Just Rick." "Well, Rick, thank you." Rick nodded, turned, and started walking away before the moment turned awkward. But just as he reached the curb, Delgado called out, "Wait." Rick turned. "I don't know what you need," Delgado said, "but I want to help." Rick gave a thin smile. "You just did." And then he vanished back into the city. The streets swallowed Rick back up like he was part of their infrastructure. Concrete, steel, and bone. He didn't expect anything from Delgado. He hadn't asked for a favor. He hadn't dropped a hint or played the part of a man desperate for rescue. He'd just handed over what wasn't his, and that was the end of it. Or so he thought. The next morning, Rick was back near the overpass, warming his hands by the steam vent behind a sandwich shop. His boots were still wet, his shoulders sore from a restless night spent on damp cardboard. But there was something different in him, something hard to name, a kind of gravity that hadn't been there the day before. He didn't feel fixed. He wasn't even sure he felt proud, but he did feel something else seen. By mid-morning, the story was already moving. Someone across the street had taken a photo, him handing the wallet to Delgado. The disbelief on Delgado's face. The caption was simple. This man returned a lost wallet and refused a reward. Class act. The post hit local Twitter first, then a neighborhood Facebook group, then a news site. By nightfall, it had jumped to the homepage of a popular blog. Rick didn't know any of this. He didn't own a phone. He found out when a woman at the soup line looked up from her screen and whispered, "Hey, this you." He blinked, saw his soaked silhouette framed against a glass office building, wallet in hand. The comments below were flooding in, words like honor, integrity, should be mayor. He smiled for a second, then looked away. It was surreal. That one small choice, just doing the right thing when no one expected him to, was spiraling into something bigger. The next day, a reporter found him. She brought coffee and a mic. Her cameraman stood 3 feet back, polite, but ready. Rick sat on a bench with his hood up, half smiling. "I'm not looking for attention," he told her. "I know," she said. "That's what makes it worth sharing." She asked his name. He only gave Rick. Asked if he wanted help. He said, "I'm fine." But even as he said it, he realized something part of him didn't want to be fine anymore. He wanted more. Not fame. Not sympathy. Just to belong somewhere again. To wake up with purpose. Not just survival. That night, a local station aired the segment. It was just 45 seconds long, sandwiched between a traffic update and a feel-good dog rescue. But it hit. Suddenly, strangers were handing him things. A bakery left a paper bag near his bench, fresh bread and a thermos of soup. A man in a baseball cap slipped him a $20 bill without saying a word. A social worker from the shelter offered to get him on a housing wait list. A priest said a prayer over him. He didn't know what to do with it all. The story was out in the world now, out of his hands. And so was the possibility that this one moment, this one choice could change everything. But part of him still didn't trust it. Rick had been burned before. Good days didn't last. Help usually came with strings or speeches. That's why he kept his distance. Why he didn't stay at the shelter too long or accept rides from well-meaning do-gooders who didn't understand what it was like to fall all the way down and have no rope left. Still, he couldn't deny what was happening. A shift. People were looking at him differently now. Not like a threat, not like a problem. Just a man. And for the first time in years, Rick felt like maybe, just maybe, he could stop disappearing. Rick was back near the sandwich shop vent, sipping black coffee from a donated paper cup. When the black SUV pulled up, it was sleek, polished out of place on this block. The windows were tinted, but the moment the passenger door opened, Rick tensed. A woman stepped out. Not a cop, not a volunteer. Business suit, clipboard, clean boots. She scanned the sidewalk, spotted him, and crossed with the confidence of someone used to being listened to. "Rick," she asked, like she already knew the answer. He hesitated. "Yeah." She extended a hand, then dropped it when she realized he wouldn't take it. "I'm from the mayor's office. She'd like to speak with you." Rick blinked. "Why?" She saw the news story, and she was moved. "I didn't do it to be moved." She smiled. "We know. That's why she wants to meet you." He hesitated. Everything inside him screamed to walk away, to stay in control of his own story before someone else took it and turned it into something hollow. But curiosity won. "Fine," he said, "but I'm not shaking any hands or making any speeches." "No speeches," the woman said, "just a conversation." The SUV smelled like leather and citrus. Rick sank into the seat, feeling the heat pulse through the vents. It was almost overwhelming. Not the luxury, but the comfort. It had been too long. They didn't go to City Hall. They went to a smaller office downtown, glass, wood paneling, fresh flowers by the elevator. The kind of place that buzzed with people who thought in schedules, not hunger. Inside, a woman stood to greet him. Mayor Thompson wasn't what Rick expected. No power pose, no entourage. Just a warm face, tired eyes, and a simple, "Hi, Rick. Thanks for coming." He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. "I saw what you did," she continued. "You could have taken that money, walked away, and no one would have blamed you. But you didn't." "Didn't feel right," he said. She nodded. "I wanted to meet you because I think the city needs to be reminded what integrity looks like. And I think you need more than applause." Rick shifted. "What's that mean?" She walked over to her desk, picked something up, and returned. A key. "This is to an apartment. Small, quiet, no rent, no catch. You've earned it." He stared at the key like it was made of glass. "You serious?" "Dead serious." "Why me?" "Because," she said, "everyone talks about second chances. You showed us what one looks like." He didn't cry. Not there. Not then. He just took the key in his hand, nodded, and whispered, "Thank you." Then he left the building in a daze, holding the key like it might disappear if he blinked. He stood in the lobby, still gripping the key like it was made of crystal. The woman from the mayor's office had just driven off, leaving Rick alone in front of a plain, 3-story brick building. Apartment 3B. No press, no welcome party. Just the key, a slip of paper with the address, and a silent hallway that smelled faintly of pine cleaner and new paint. Rick climbed the stairs slowly, his boots thudding softly on each step. The hallway stretched ahead, lined with numbered doors, each one hiding a life. He stopped in front of 3B. The key shook in his hand, not from nerves he'd faced colder nights and harder truths, but from disbelief. He turned it in the lock. The door clicked open. Light from a small window spilled across the floor. The apartment was quiet, clean. A twin bed with a fresh blanket sat in one corner. A simple dresser, a 2-burner stove, a fridge, a heater, humming in the wall. A bathroom door stood slightly ajar, the edge of a shower curtain just visible inside. On the counter was a folded note. Rick stepped over and opened it. "You earned this, Marcus Delgado." He hadn't needed to sign it, but Rick knew. The handwriting was neat, direct. He sat on the bed. The mattress didn't sag. The frame didn't creak. He took off his boots, really took them off. Not for 5 minutes by a fire, but for good. Set them beside the bed like someone who lived somewhere. Like someone with a home. He didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, he stood, opened every cabinet, every drawer, empty, but clean. Nothing broken. He turned on the faucet. Hot water. Real hot water. He touched it like it was alive. He walked into the bathroom. There was soap, a clean towel, a mirror that didn't lie. His reflection startled him. Thinner than he remembered. Older. But still there, back in the bedroom. He sat again. The silence was different here. Not hollow like the streets. Not threatening like the shelters. Just quiet. A kind of stillness he hadn't felt in years. He lay back. For a long time, he stared at the ceiling. Not planning, not dreaming. Just being. For once, he didn't have to guard his backpack. Didn't have to keep one boot on. Didn't have to stay half awake in case someone came looking for what little he had. Here, he could close his eyes and not vanish. He pulled the blanket over his chest, then listened to the heater hum, closed his eyes, and finally slept. The next morning, Rick woke up warm. That detail alone felt surreal. No cardboard, no concrete, no adrenaline keeping him half-conscious through the night. Just the soft weight of a blanket and the whisper of the heater exhaling into the stillness. He lay there for a long time, afraid to move. Not because he thought it might be a dream he knew it wasn't, but because he wasn't sure what came next. After survival. What do you do? Eventually, he sat up, feet on solid floor, and laughed softly under his breath. It wasn't joy. Not yet. But it was relief. A kind he hadn't felt in years. the kind that let you breathe without measuring the cost. He took a shower, shaved with a cheap razor he found in the bathroom cabinet. When he looked in the mirror afterward, he almost didn't recognize himself. Not cleaner, sharper, more real. By noon, he stepped outside for the first time. The city looked the same streets, same honking, same rush. But something was different. People noticed him now. Not all of them, but enough. A woman jogging with her dog gave him a nod and a small, curious smile. A guy in a delivery truck rolled down his window as Rick passed. "Hey," the driver said. "You're that guy." "Right. The one with the wallet." Rick blinked. "Yeah, that was me." The driver grinned. "Respect, man. Seriously." Rick nodded, surprised. The man drove off. He ducked into a small coffee shop. He didn't have money, but he didn't want to ask for anything. He just wanted to sit, to be normal. The barista behind the counter looked up, paused, then lit up. "Wait, you're Rick, aren't you?" Rick sighed, sheepish. "Yeah. You want coffee?" "I don't have—" "Don't worry about it," she said. "Already pouring. It's on the house. You've been all over the news." He accepted the cup, sat at the window, and for the first time in years, he wasn't watching the world pass him by. He was part of it. Across the city, the story kept spreading. A city council member tweeted about the anonymous man with dignity. A local nonprofit started a fundraiser in his name to provide winter gear to the unhoused. A talk radio host declared Rick proof that decency still exists. People argued in comment sections about what should happen next. Some wanted him hired by the mayor's office. Others wanted him on the news again. A few cynics called it a stunt. But Rick didn't care about any of that. He just wanted to live quietly, honestly, day by day. One evening, a knock came at his door. It was Marcus Delgado. Rick opened it, surprised, but didn't hesitate. Delgado looked less formal this time. No suit, just a sweater and jeans, and a paper bag in one hand. "I brought dinner," he said. "Hope you're not a vegetarian." Rick stepped aside. "Come in." They sat at the counter. Delgado unpacked takeout roast chicken, rice, plantains. The food smelled like comfort. Rick hadn't eaten like this in a long time. "I wanted to thank you again," Delgado said. "Not just for returning the wallet, for reminding me what the right thing looks like." Rick shrugged. "I just gave something back." Delgado looked at him carefully. "I've been in this city 30 years, and in all that time, I've never seen a gesture ripple the way yours has." Rick didn't reply. Delgado leaned forward. "What do you want to do next?" Rick blinked. "What do you mean? You've got a place now. Stability. But you're not someone who's meant to disappear. So what's next?" Rick didn't answer right away. He hadn't let himself think that far ahead, but the question lingered in the air. He was no longer just surviving. He had the chance to build again. The ripple had started. Now it was up to him to decide where it would go. The story refused to fade. Even weeks later, Rick's name, or at least the version of it the public knew, kept circulating. The honest homeless man. That's what people called him online. He hated that phrase. It flattened everything. Took the ugliest part of his past and welded it to the best decision he'd ever made. Like he could never be anything more than a parable. And yet, opportunities kept coming. Nonprofits called, churches sent invites. Someone offered to write a book about him. A local paper wanted to run a follow-up story. A man with a beard and a podcast mic approached him outside the laundromat, asking if he'd mind sharing a few thoughts about grace. Rick turned most of them down, not because he was ungrateful, but because every offer felt like a trap in wrapping paper, like the city was waiting for him to mess up so it could shove him back into silence. He didn't want to be a symbol. He just wanted a life. He tried to keep things simple. He picked up part-time work at a supply shop near the river, stacking boxes, sweeping floors. The owner didn't ask questions. Paid in cash, gave him a new pair of gloves, and let him drink coffee from the break room. It was honest labor, quiet, predictable. At night, he returned to the apartment, made instant noodles, read old library books, learned how to be still. But even in the stillness, pressure buzzed under the surface. Sometimes, when he walked to the store, people still stopped him. "You're the guy from the story. I told my kids about you. You give me hope." He nodded, smiled, thanked them. But inside, he was drowning in a feeling he couldn't quite name. Was he supposed to live up to something now? Was returning a wallet enough to warrant a second chance? Did he deserve all of this? One afternoon, after work, Rick found a man sitting on the curb near the convenience store, shaking in a thin hoodie, face raw from the wind. The man looked just like Rick had a month ago, or a year, or maybe forever. He crouched beside him, held out a sandwich and half a bottle of water. The man didn't say thanks, just tore the sandwich open with trembling hands. Rick didn't need gratitude. He just needed to remember this is what mattered. Not cameras, not headlines, not mayors or microphones, just people trying to hold each other up long enough to make it through. He stood, slipped a $10 bill from his pocket, folded it small, dropped it beside the sandwich, and walked away. He didn't tell anyone, didn't post about it, didn't feel heroic. But for the first time since the apartment, the pressure cracked just a little, because he remembered who he was and who he wanted to be. Spring came slow that year, like it didn't trust the city to appreciate it. But on the first real, warm morning, Rick stood on the small balcony outside apartment 3B, sipping coffee from a chipped white mug he'd found at a thrift store. No gloves, no jacket, just a flannel shirt and a head full of thoughts. He looked down at the street, at the world moving past below buses, dogs on leashes, kids dragging backpacks twice their size, people who didn't know his name or maybe forgot it. And for the first time in years, that felt okay. He didn't need to be the man from the story anymore. He was just a man, building something. A few days earlier, he'd signed paperwork for a custodial job at a local community center. Steady hours, benefits, a real name on a real paycheck. The director didn't care about the press coverage. What mattered to her was that Rick showed up early for the interview and brought a notepad with questions written in the margins. He kept the job offer in his kitchen drawer next to the folded note from Delgado. "You earned this." That line lived in his bones now, not as a reward, but as a reminder. Earning something meant continuing to show up for himself, for others, even on the days when he felt invisible again, even when no one was watching. Rick still saw people from the old life. He kept an eye on the benches, the underpasses, the steam vents. He knew who was sleeping rough by the way they moved in the morning. Quiet, stiff, guarded. Sometimes he sat with them, not to give speeches, just to talk. A sandwich here, a blanket there, the name of a caseworker who actually answered the phone, a tip on which church had showers open. The smallest things. He didn't try to save anyone. That wasn't his job. But he showed up. And sometimes that was enough. On a Sunday afternoon in April, he got a letter. It was handwritten. The return address read N. Riker, Philadelphia. Natalie, his daughter. He stood at the kitchen counter for a long time before opening it. His hands shook. His stomach twisted in a knot he hadn't felt in years. Inside was a short note. "Hi, Dad. I saw you on the news a while ago. I wasn't sure it was you at first. Then I knew. I'm glad you're okay. If you want to talk, here's my number. Nat." No anger, no guilt, just an opening. Rick sat down on the edge of the bed and held the letter in both hands. Not crying, not smiling, just stunned. The past didn't erase itself. It left marks. But maybe, just maybe, it didn't have to own the future. That night, Rick stood by the window with the city humming low in the background. The lights outside blinked red and gold. Somewhere, a siren wailed. Somewhere else, laughter echoed down a hallway. He breathed it all in. Not a symbol, not a headline, not a mistake. Just a man who returned a wallet and found his way back. Rick's story reminds us that integrity isn't about grand gestures. It's about doing the right thing when no one expects you to. In a world quick to overlook those on the margins, his quiet choice to return a lost wallet became a ripple that exposed just how hungry we are for decency. It shows that a second chance isn't something given, it's something earned and lived, day by day, choice by choice. Most importantly, it teaches us that dignity isn't tied to wealth, status, or perception. It's something deeper, unshakable, and worth fighting for, even when the world stops looking. Thank you for watching and being part of this journey. If Rick's story moved you or made you think differently about second chances, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let us know what resonated most with you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that spotlight real moments, real people, and real change. Your feedback helps us grow, so hit the like button. Share this with someone who needs a reminder of the good still out there, and tell us what kind of stories you want to see next.